So, welcome to another Sunday Wisdom session. In this session, we're continuing the theme of attachment. And it's part of the series where we're speaking about the content of the book, The Fall of the Human Intellect by Swami Parthasarathy. The idea of today's lecture is based on the many questions and inputs and questions that some of you sent to me about particularly parenting. And this is an interesting one because it's not just attachment of parents to children, which is the one that we think about, but also the more unusual and the one that is not talked about enough. What about the attachment from children to parents? Especially for many of you that we're familiar with and we know your situation. How do we deal with the aging of parents when the tables are turned and the parents become dependent on the children? So we're going to be sharing a few themes and ideas. And they're based on these ancient principles of Vedanta. And the idea from the sessions is to first receive the principle. Let's get the spirit of the principle and then see which aspect or how can we apply it in some manner to our particular relationship. So here we go. The first is, and the title for today, Love Without Attachment. What does that look like from a parent to a child, and what does love without attachment look like for the child to the parent? Love is a positive quality. It's a positive emotion, and it brings people together. So if there is love in a family, you can expect harmony, you can expect an atmosphere of growth, an atmosphere of independence. However, love is not the issue. And when we talk about detachment, we mistake attachment for love. This is where relationships get corrupted. Because no doubt there is emotion and affection there, but when the love gets polluted by selfishness, it expresses in the form of control. So instead of the independence that love brings, we get the dependency of attachment. Instead of the support and the consideration that love brings, we encourage a bondage relationship. We encourage a dependency, we encourage a possessiveness, the feeling of minus over the person. And whereas love is acceptance of the person and their nature, attachment is imposing unrealistic expectations on that person. So we want love in the relationships. And we go back to the equation on attachment. Love is positive. But when the selfishness creeps into the relationship, and we found ways in the last session of diagnosing it, exactly what we covered in terms of dependency, possessiveness, and unrealistic expectation, then it moves to attachment. So these are the symptoms where we can see which of our relationships is moving from the love side to the attachment side. And what do we need to do to get back to love? Reduce the selfishness, reduce the dependency, reduce the control, the instruction, and reduce the imposition of our values, of our needs, wants, desires on that person. How do we reduce attachment? Anyone? This is generally, but also particularly to this relationship of parents and children? How do we reduce any attachment?
Reflect on it carefully and deeply.
Reflection, okay. So that brings about awareness, and that's a good starting point because, as we've mentioned, if we think that our relationship is fine, I love my child, in fact, I am such a good parent, my child cannot live without me. How old is your child? 45 years old. This is not healthy. So yes, awareness and reflection first. Okay, what else?
Boundaries.
Boundaries.
No
Yes.
expectations.
No expectations.
You just love without any expectations.
Love without any expectations. In fact, expectation is an interesting one because with expectation, we're saying it's okay to expect, but your expectation should be based on reality, not on some idea you have of the person. So expectation is okay, but it should be reasonable expectation. Like I can expect, and I'm speaking to you from Aruba today. We're hosted by one of our Sunday Wisdom Session students here who's sharing the subject with their community and their country. And I can expect Aruba is pretty consistent weather-wise through the year. So I can expect sunshine and a little bit of wind tomorrow. I can expect it because it's based on weather patterns, it's based on the weather predictions, it's realistic. So the same thing with people. Based on their nature, we can have expectations. The part that frees us from attachment, and it should be our starting point, is do we have a higher goal to attach to? And what we do is that when we have a child, we make that our identity, we make that our purpose of life. But nothing in this world, external, any relationship, can ever be permanent. So no doubt, at some point, the child must leave you. Either in the form of growth, in the form of life, also perhaps in the form of death, a parting. So if you make your whole, be all and end all of purpose in life, your children, we're setting ourselves up for attachment to children. So let's start with what then is our role of being a parent? Because often we don't define it, and because we don't define it, we tend to err on the intervention, the interfering side, the controlling side, the attachment side. So by activating our intellect, by asking us, what is my purpose as a parent? What is my role here during this stage of life, of having brought a child into this world, makes it clearer. And it makes us also able, as was brought up, to fix our boundaries, to help them fix theirs, to know where we are creating dependence and where we are creating independence. So let's take a leaf out of nature's book. When we look at the animal kingdom, we observe that animals, when they're young, the parents are extremely protective. And it makes sense because the cubs, the calves are completely dependent on the mother, the father, the parents. And because of that dependency, no doubt there needs to be extra protection because that's when the child or the wards can be exploited, either attacked by predators, and the same thing with human beings. So we see from nature, very protective in the beginning. But then as they get older, the parent animal starts imparting skills: how to hunt, how to feed, where to look for feed, how to pick up danger, etc. So starts imparting all these skills until, and interestingly, there comes a point where now the tiger or whichever animal that we're observing is independent. And once it's independent, it's almost indifferent. It's bye-bye, all the best. I've trained you, I've given you the skills, go out, live your life. Form your own pride, form your own pack, all the best. Say, how harsh? No, no, no. There's a role. The idea of nature is for the next generation to take forward all the traits of that particular family and evolve it, express it, go out and live it. And that's what we see with the animal kingdom. So there's 3 phases. In the beginning, protective. In the middle, training to become independent. And once independent, let go. Now, with human beings, we also have these instincts, and a lot of the aspects from animals we can adopt and we can take lessons from. Other aspects we can evolve. We have the aspect of reasoning. But because we don't use the intellect, we get attached and we want to hold on. We want to keep that child a child right through. We enjoy the dependence, we enjoy the phone call, we enjoy giving advice, and we don't impart the skills for independence, middle stage, and we don't let go. The role of a parent is to make the child independent. What does it mean for a human being to be independent? For a human being to be able to handle and meet the world is to develop the intellect, to manage the mind, to adapt to situations, challenges, different stresses that come along. And when these challenges come along, as they have to, it's the nature of life, the child is ready, prepared for life. Now, there is an article released in the Times of India where it was talking about how Gen Z is bringing their parents to the workplace for the interviews, to negotiate the salary, to have difficult conversations, to ask for a promotion, to say if they don't like a particular aspect. They're bringing their parents. Can you imagine the interviewer's perspective? The interviewer is there, or the HR person is there, or the senior colleague is there, and the person has asked for time with you. And in they walk in, and they leave the door open, and behind them follows the parents. Have we created the independence? Some are attached to the idea of a child even before having the child. So when we look at the attachment itself, to go into parenting is to understand that before having a child, I was a person. So my identity was there before. This is only going to be a stage in my life. This is going to be one of the roles I play. And when they go to university, when they get their jobs, start their own families, they will have their independence. So there will be a time where I, again, will not be so active in this role, or the role takes a different phase. So I prepare for that change. I have a bigger picture on the canvas of my life. That keeps me detached. Now, the worst is, we want it to last forever. We think it's going to last forever. And even before having the children, we form the ideas, we form the attachments. A lady gave birth. Husband is waiting, so excited, first child, waiting outside the maternity ward. And they have an area where it's glass, and you can see all the different babies being brought in after delivery. And they're kept in these glass cots, and he's waiting there, waiting for his chance to see the baby. And a nurse comes in, taps him on the shoulder, and says, "Congratulations, there is your daughter on the right." And he turns his attention and he looks at that bundle. And it really is a bundle. So, despite the popular myth, when babies are just born, they really have not grown into their cuteness yet. They're just a lot of folds and not quite attractive just yet. But he's looking at this bundle of folds, small, tiny thing, and the emotions start going. And he says, "Oh, darling, I am going to take care of you. I'm going to read you bedtime stories, and I will teach you how to cycle, and I will teach you how to rollerblade, and I will take you for ballet classes." And he's carrying on, and you can see like all these ideas are building up. I'm going to take you to your prom dance, I'll drop you off, and I will give a touching speech on your wedding day. All these ideas are welling up, and the emotions are getting the better of him. And the nurse sees this. And then she sees where his gaze is. And again says, "Sir, sorry to disturb, but it's not that baby, it's the one on the upper row." What happens to all the emotions that were going towards that bundle? Immediately dropped and transferred, start again with the next bundle. And this is what we do. Before the child is even born, we put the expectation on what the child is going to be, what we're going to do with the child. And this sets us up for attachment. No doubt planning is important, but that is different from the attachment and expectation. Because when we do this, our mind starts racing. There's anxiety, and there's a way that we would like to bring up the child. But all this is happening irrespective of the actual child's nature. All these great dreams and plans. Have you consulted the child? Are you sure the child wants to get married? Are you sure the child is into sport? Are you sure the child wants to go into business? Wants to be an accountant or a doctor? So let's take a step back. We detach. And detachment does not mean no emotion. It means true love. It means loving without attachment, without control. And let's aspire for the child comes into our care. So we need to take care of the child. If we are attached, we make the mistake of assuming that we are owners of the child rather than custodians. And perhaps that change in relationship, and this is where the power of words is so helpful, so useful. We are not owners. They are not your possessions. Our relationship with our children is more guardian, trustee. Khalil Gibran, he puts it beautifully. He says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. Khalil Gibran. What a way of looking at parenting. Our role is to take this life force that comes through you, not from you. So we don't own it, and letting that life force take its path. And our role is just to guide, not shape, not mold. Because, why do we say this? In every life, there are two forces going on. The first is nature. So that's what Khalil Gibran means. Every person comes in with an already defined nature. They have their personality. And these are called, in Vedanta, our vasanas. Vasanas means the seeds of our personality. The why we think the way we think, why we feel the way we feel, why we are attracted to certain things, not attracted to certain things. This is because of our vasanas. And we already come into this world with the vasanas. That's the nature part. But the second part, which parenting and upbringing can contribute greatly and influence the nature, influence the life of that being, is the nurture part. And the nurture part is the environment. So just as the nature is your seeds, the nurture part is what type of soil is it given? What type of water do you use? Are you watering it at all? So you might water one seed and it flourishes in that environment. You may not water another seed, it doesn't do so well. But it's based primarily on the nature of the child. That's the cause and effect relationship. But putting the right environment and structure in place will ensure that those aspects of the child's nature flourish. Our role as a parent is the nurture part. So we take the positive aspects of it and we say, I will do the best that I can in nurturing this being. But I also understand it has a nature of its own. I cannot impose my nature. I cannot impose, I always wanted to be a swimmer and I never got a chance to swim, and now I'm going to impose swimming on my child. No doubt sports, health, fitness is helpful generally for the child's well-being and growing up later. But how many hours a day? Does it have to be their career? And that's where our responsibility as guardians is to help the child find their nature, their swadharma, their vasanas. Help them find it and encourage it, rather than trying to build and force a new nature. The other side of it is, okay, so one part is where we're trying to impose our views, but the other part is where we get so disappointed when, despite our best efforts, the child does not flourish. And yes, it's due to nature. If you've done everything right and the child is not flourishing in that particular field, it could be academics, it could be sport, it may not be the child's nature. And what that does is it removes the anxiety from parenting. If we take it in the right way, it doesn't remove the responsibility. It removes anxiety. We cannot control this child's destiny. We cannot control what the child will become, what the child will do. All we can do is give the foundation, give the support, and let that life force continue on its journey. Along the way, if we can pass on the skills that we've learnt, great. Now, how to pass on the skills? This is the other conflict in parenting. One aspect that we learned from one of our friends on our travels is they've taken Vedanta and they said, okay, how do I encourage independence? And especially, we are well-to-do, we live a comfortable lifestyle. How do I ensure that I don't make my child dependent on the comforts that I'm providing them and the wealth that they've been born into? How do I not make them dependent on that? Because they're going to live their own life. And what if they can't manage without these comforts? What if they can't manage their wealth because they're so used to myself, my partner, doing everything for them? So he thought about it. And I feel there should be a forum, and maybe this is the forum, where we can discuss ideas to improve our parenting, to make children independent, because it's different perspectives, and we've got to customize it for the child in front of us. And this is the technique he came up with. So when the child was 13, he asked the child, "How much do you think you cost me?" And the child said, "What do you mean? Dad," there's a daughter, "Dad, what do you mean? Now, how much do you think I spend on you for the year?" "I don't know, Dad. Not much. I'm such a nice child." I said, "Okay, I want you to think about it. Put it down. Find out the amounts." It's like, "What do you mean?" "Your school fees. When you go out, when you want a particular coach, and list all of those items, figure out the total, come back to me." So she did the exercise, she came back and she showed the amount. And the father said, "This is it?" She said, "Yes, Dad, I think this is this amount. I found out the school fees, I found out my cell phone bill, this is what it is." He said, "Okay, then I'm going to give you this amount in monthly installments. And that is going to be your allowance for the month to pay all your bills, to take care of all your expenses. If you run out, don't come back to me." The daughter said, "Hang on, Dad, wait, hang on. I haven't thought about this properly." And then the daughter went and checked with the mother. "Mom, am I missing out anything?" And then she said, "Yeah, sure. Darling, like when you go and if you need to buy an outfit for the party, where do you get that from?" Oh, so she put that out, going out outfits. "And if you're going for a movie and then you do dinner with the friends, where does that come from?" Oh, and she's writing all of this down. And no doubt she left a few things. And the father doesn't mean to punish. He's not a miser in any way, but it's to teach how to start managing finances. And started implementing it. And the daughter started. And then when she was 16, and I remember one of the conversations was 16 or 18, it depends on the country. I started driving, and she was telling me that it takes like 10 minutes to walk to university after she parks. So I asked, "Isn't there a parking closer to the university?" And she says, "No, that one is too expensive." So I park where the fee is cheaper, and that saves me so much, and then I can use that amount on. Look at the thinking at 16. Now I'm saying this is one idea of how to bring independence. When we give an instruction, or when we give a threat, or when we give a rule, it does not empower the child. It does not develop the intellect to manage their mind, manage their lives. So they're following or doing that thing because of the threat or because of the reward. They have not inculcated that value for themselves. So once they leave you, or for any reason you are not around, the value disappears. So how do we go about provoking them to make it theirs? And that's where questioning and getting them to make the decisions rather than deciding for them, rather than doing the thinking process for them, getting them to do the thinking process and come to a conclusion is how we develop the intellect. Often, the approach parents make is not effective because of two things. The first is the double fault of any leader is we give too much advice. Constant advice, instruction, pep talks. But every time we tell the child something, we lose a little bit of influence. But then you say, but isn't that the job of parenting? Isn't the job of parenting to tell them relentlessly what to do? No, that's not the job of parenting. Okay, when they're young, yes, we've got to direct and we've got to protect. But all the while, especially once the intellect starts surfacing in the child, is to explain, to go through in detail. And try and get it to come from them so that they're asking you instead of you telling them. That's the first one. So there's so much of advice given, so that constant instruction makes them either want to rebel or shut down. They don't want to engage, and they feel like they know everything that the parent has said. So anything that is in that vein, they just can't take it anymore. They shut down, they don't listen. The second part is not leading by example. And this not leading by example is the counter effect of actually when they're born, they're looking for example. But because of the instruction, we remove the receptivity, we remove them wanting to imitate, to copy us, and then we actually don't set a good example that we ourselves are suggesting that they do. So imagine, we're telling the kids to be punctual, be on time, focus on their studies. And we are not focused. On the phone, at the table, who? The parent. Taking calls during the meals. So we're setting that tone for the child. And then we're asking the child, don't have your phone when you're studying. Don't text when you're talking to me. Not realizing the example that we're setting. So when it comes to instruction, Leo Tolstoy says, so this is the quote by Leo Tolstoy. I sit on a man's back, choking him and making him carry me, and yet assure myself and others that I am sorry for him and wish to lighten his load by all means possible, except by getting off his back. And Swamiji, the author of The Fall of the Human Intellect, he changes the quote somewhat. He revises it. And he says, my spouse and I, so similar language, ride on our children's back, crushing them with our load of expectation, instruction, and yet assure ourselves and others that we are sorry for them. Poor child, and wish to lighten their burden by all means possible, except by getting off their back. We don't realize the load that we put on the children. So then if we are not instructing, what is parenting? How do we influence? How do we guide? Example, lead the life, make it attractive. The Bhagavad Gita says, render all your actions attractive. Whatsoever the superior person does, others will follow. Abraham Lincoln, there is just one way to bring up a child in the way he should go. And that is to travel that way yourself. This is it. We lead the way. So if we can move towards leading by example and less instruction, we will find more effectiveness. And this is for all leadership. So you can take it from a CEO's perspective, but definitely from a parent's perspective. Oliver Goldsmith says, you can preach a better sermon with your life than with your lips. So then, what would parenting with these principles look like? It would be leading by example, minimizing the instruction as much as possible. Try not, once they've reached teenager level, adulthood, not intervening unless it is something disastrous, life or death. Let life teach them, and you be available for them to come to. You be a resource. But we're cutting off our accessibility by the instruction. Pick our battles. Which ones are important? And if at all they come to us for advice, and some of us will be thinking, my goodness, Sudhakar told me about this, I've been trying it, I've been waiting for 3 months, I did not say anything. I can see them going down a bad stretch, I can see them choosing a bad partner, bad girlfriend, bad boyfriend. I didn't say anything. I'm practicing Vedanta. And you're so frustrated inside. And then the child reaches out to you after 3 months because you didn't say anything. He says, Mom, Dad, do you have any, what do you think? I was thinking about doing this. And he said, oh my goodness, I was waiting for this chance, and you grab it and for 2 hours you offload everything on your mind. And now the child is confirmed. I should not have spoken to you about this. I should not have come to you. Be hesitant. Ask the child, what do you think? What is your thought process? And if at all, in our guidance, question. Because the child doesn't benefit from you short-circuiting the thinking process and giving the answer. It is them working on their own thinking process, which we can help if they come to us with questioning them, getting them to become clearer on what they want, what they're looking for, and not being agenda specific, what outcome I want, but seeing if the child is doing the due diligence. In that way, we can be a support. And when the child is independent, let go. Go and live your life. And the trouble is, when we age, that's when we want the return on investment. In fact, some have children with the idea, who's going to look after me when I get old? But have you signed a contract with your child? Is your child aware of this expectation? And if the child is not aware of this expectation and you are expecting it and you don't get it, it is the saddest thing to see. Where you're waiting for the child or the children to come and take care of you, because the idea is you took care of them. But you chose to have children. They did not choose to take care of you as you get older. So again, let us prepare for when they leave, either for university. So that role or that time that was taken by the children, let us have our next project ready. And as we get older, let us plan to be independent. How can we live in a particular way, not expecting help from the children? And the irony is, that is when they come and help. That is when they come and assist. Mom, do you need anything? Dad, are you okay? But strive for independence. So with parenting, it is doing the best that we can in terms of nurture and leaving the rest. All the best. Good luck. That's not the end of the class. That's the attitude for the child. Go and live life. If you need us, give us a call. Now, what about the role of the child to the parent? For the child, it is more difficult because they do not have the intellect when they're born. So they are completely dependent on the parent. And when you're born with the body and the mind. And the mind, no doubt, develops the emotions and the attachment straight away. You're the first people that they see. So the child develops an attachment, a dependency naturally to the parents. And when the intellect comes in, the attachment is already there. So we can't blame the child for being attached to the parents because of the nature of the dependence from birth itself. But there is so much suffering from the child's perspective. Imagine you're born a prisoner. In the book, The Holocaust of Attachment by Swamiji, he talks about how we're born in captivity. We're already imprisoned by our nature. Like we're born with particular talents or particular weaknesses. So that nature is already there. The gender is already chosen. The family is already there. So now you're born and then you've got the wardens, mom and dad, telling you what to do. So the book initially, this book on attachment, was written for children to survive the attachment of their parents and come out sane. But Swamiji realized, whilst writing the book, children are not going to buy the book for themselves. The parents are going to buy the book. So, okay, we need to work on the attachment of the parents and hopefully they will pass it down to the children. And the advice to the children is this: we are dependent. You are dependent when we're born into this world. So, take the guidance. Understand the dependence, at least till 18 or at least until you are dependent. Take the foundation, take the lessons. Follow the rules because you are dependent. And then as you develop your dependence, keep picking up skills either from your parents or from school or from other family members or the world. There's so many sources out there to learn different skills. Once you are independent, go out and live. This does not mean rejecting the parents, does not mean asserting your individuality where you remove your past, but it's maturity. That you no longer depend on the parents financially, emotionally, intellectually. So again, we take the best from the upbringing and the instruction, the nagging, the wanting to mold, we understand that that is attachment. And it's coming from a place of love. It is love, it's just the selfishness creeps in there. It's okay. Now, if we don't understand the role of the child to the parent, the dependence comes in. We outsource our thinking to the parents. We outsource our decision making. We don't follow our nature. We follow the parents' nature. And this leads to frustration. It leads to not asserting our personalities fully. And the other aspect that comes from the attachment is we take what the parent says as perfect. We put them on a pedestal. So when they are not true to the pedestal or the position, we feel disappointed, disillusioned. We take them as providers, but we don't see them as people. And from the child's perspective, they've not known anyone before the parents. So that's why the attachment is so strong from the child to the parent. We've got to understand that the role of life is there is going to be a time where we may have to continue without the parent. So let us learn, develop the skills from that upbringing and take it forward. Not all the skills will be complete, and we find now, today, children blaming their parents for everything, for the way they think, for the way they behave, for all the problems that they have. Again, there are two factors. There is nurture, but there's also nature. What are you doing about your situation? You cannot blame the parents for everything. How are you reacting to the scenario, the environment? No doubt the parents are responsible for the nurture, for the influence, for the environment, and that makes a huge difference. But you are not a complete victim. And to realize that they're also people. There's no course on parenting out there in the world. It's not part of anyone's education. So everyone is a work in progress. So are they. So whatever values and capacity they had, they did their best. And that's the love, the forgiveness, the accepting of the nature of the parent and moving on. And the part that the child has to prepare for is the aging parent and also the death of the parent. I've seen so many people battle for years, sometimes a decade, when a parent passes. Not prepared for this eventuality, because it's a person who's been with you through your whole life, seen every stage, and you've got such fundamental, foundational memories. But the preparation needs to be done early, including with aging. And as the parents become dependent, again, it's important to encourage the parents to be independent. And if at all we support and help, it's putting systems in place that keep them independent, so that the child is never felt as being held back. You can choose it, but it should be out of your volition, not because of societal pressure or parental guilt. You may choose it. That's the child or son or daughter you want to be. So let us purify our relationships with our parents, but also with our children. And the questions to ask are, where in the relationship am I practicing love? Where am I practicing attachment? Right? So the areas that I'm doing well, great. I'm getting the principles right. The areas that I'm not doing well, and you can definitely see because of the response from the other person, so you're feeling suffering, you're feeling agitation, stress, anxiety. It means something's wrong. That's attachment. Identify those areas. And then come back to the love question. Am I helping the other person grow? Or am I holding them back? That's today's topic. Love without attachment, parents and children. So now we take up your questions. If you have a question, I'll also look at the chat.
We have a question from Amina.
Okay.
And she asks, do we not have sacred contracts with our parents?
So that's the discussion, Amina. What is that contract? And it's important to examine what it is. Otherwise, we will feel frustrated because we feel as if that contract has been imposed by the parent or by society. So we should think, what is our role as a child? What is our role as a parent? And that's hopefully the few points in today's discussion will help us decide our role. It may be helpful, Amina, also to share what you see as your obligation to the child, and vice versa, what you see as your obligation to the parent. So they can also start managing their expectations. So you're doing the thinking for them and you're helping them with their expectations. So they're not expecting you to drop everything at their beck and call, at their convenience, because you have projects going on. No doubt, if there's an emergency, they understand, and if that's the role you've chosen, that you're the first one they can call. Okay, so if you have a question, raise your hand. There's a tab there which has a react. Yes, Paresh.
So sometimes what happens in this relationship between elderly parents and grown-up children is there is a very blurred and gray line between what is seen as duty and what is actually attachment. And both sides can't see with the clarity required. The elderly parents and the adult children, because that it's very blurry, it's very gray, this whole issue of what is duty, what perhaps we may in Vedanta describe as dharma, and attachment.
So, duties are defined by yourself, by your intellect. If we determine our duties based on what everyone says, you will find it differs from culture to culture. It differs from person to person. It differs from parent to parent. So duty is, from your own perspective, what have I decided to do as a son to my parent? What is the kind of son I am going to be? How much time am I going to dedicate? What areas can I assist in? Now remember, when it's an aging parent, that person is living the result of their choices, the result of their investments, the result of their lifestyle. So they're going through a lifestyle that they've molded, that they've chosen. So with respect to the obligation of the child to the parent, it is an opt-in. No doubt, the spirit of gratitude is important for any relationship. But how that gratitude manifests in terms of execution and obligation as duty should be clearly defined by you. Because as the person becomes more dependent or has made choices that has created that dependency, there is no end to satisfying that dependency. So it is so easy for you to give more than you anticipated, more than your capacity. And you find the other areas of the child's life, they're not growing because of the amount of energy and capacity this is taking. So all we're saying, Paresh, is define it. And keep a sense of proportion. There are certain situations that will demand time and capacity. But we're talking about general lifestyle here. So illness, even illness, we should try and prepare for, both from the child side and the parent side. But keep a sense of proportion that there will be times where more energy, more capacity is needed, and keep a buffer for that.
Yes, hi. So my question here was that my daughter feels that she's parenting me more than I'm been the parent. And every time I go to talk to her, she feels like, do it yourself, that's a mother's job. Why are you asking me to do it? It's not my job, it's a parent's job. I'm tired of parenting you. So we have like every day, this kind of talks where I'm not able to understand because from my end, I think I'm doing whatever is in my capacity.
How do we draw the boundaries? And the boundaries are by having the conversation with the child. What are the expectations, especially if you're living together? What are the expectations? And it's an adult child. So, no doubt certain facilities are provided, but there are certain needs. So, how are we contributing to the household for each other? There's a family, and so something along these lines, Nimble. There was a family that brought their teenagers together and they sat them down and they said, okay, this is a family meeting, and I want us to think about what we would like to contribute to this family. And the kids are like, what do you mean contribute to this family? And the dad says, like, for instance, like, I want to contribute a good lifestyle. I want to contribute income. That's why I go to work, and I'd like to contribute good schools, some nice holidays. But I want each of us to think what we can contribute, and let's come back. But you see that, just that question, what would you like to contribute to the household? So perhaps because of our behavior in the past, we have created the nature or the expectation to the child that whatever they ask, our job is to provide. And there was never a phase that as they moved into adulthood that was questioned or changed. So suggestion is, have the conversation and let it be a reset. What are the expectations in the relationship from both sides? And see what each other can meet and cannot meet. And that clarity may help the relationship. Question, Avanya?
We have a question from the chat. How do you deal with an elderly person who understands but guilt trips their adult child to do things selfishly using old age as an excuse?
So this question, and this is why we brought up the theme of aging, because the dependent parent tells the child what their duty is and says, this is your duty because I've done all these different aspects for you. And you may have heard the lines. I have definitely heard it growing up around family members. You know, I carried you when you were a baby. Look, I couldn't walk. I kept you in my stomach for 9 months. I'm not saying necessarily my mother, in the sense like she didn't say that, but I've heard people just use these lines on their children. It is the child's prerogative to decide whether they are going to be victimized by that emotion that they feel of guilt. No doubt we would like to please the parent. We would not like to disappoint the parent. We would like to please the parent naturally. But define it. Define to what level. We would like to give. Generally, we'd like to be more charitable. How much charity do you give? You have a budget for it. Same thing we're doing with our parents. How much time do I want to dedicate? In terms of calls, in terms of availability, in terms of finance, put a budget for it. If the parent is mature enough to take it, is not emotional, where they think, show me your budget. Oh, this is where I rank in terms of priorities. You've put me so far down. Then you don't want to have that conversation with them. But if they are open, if they are receptive, say, look, this is what I'm working on. I am dedicated to my career. I am dedicated on this project. And of course I care about you. So I'm going to reach out to you once a week. We'll have our call and we'll go for lunch. So the parent starts managing their expectation. The trouble with a parent who has not done the preparation for aging, all their attention turns to their attachment because they have nothing else that they've prepared or engaged themselves with. So their whole application turns on the child. Now we can understand that and we can be empathetic about it, but we need not feel guilty about it and we need not feel that we have to do more than we've decided to do. But the parent will be upset. It's okay to be upset. Just as when you're parenting a child and you were the child and the parents, for growth perspectives, realize that this is not positive, did not give you what you wanted. The same thing. There's nothing wrong with being upset. You don't aim to upset the person, but if a person is not being reasonable or is wanting more than you can give, the suffering will be there.
Just an extension of the conversation that has taken place, when we combine for an old parent the issue of aging, which is a natural phenomenon, you cannot avoid that, and disease, wouldn't it be that the standards of beauty that a child applies would be different towards different stages of the old age also? I mean, I'm just saying 70 to 80 maybe one, and I'm just giving a number to make a point. Everybody's situation is different. But there comes a time when the parents are totally, they have really no way to look after themselves because they are truly physically dependent. Then wouldn't the definition and the yardstick and the application of intellect change with the passage of the time? So it's all in the context per se is what my point would be.
I'm saying as a child being born into the world, you have no choice. You have no choice as a child. So the moral obligation for the parent, having brought a child into the world, that responsibility is there. The other way around, for the parent, aging is something that we see coming a good distance away, depending on our foresight. You can see it at 25, what life is at 75. We've got enough examples around us. You can see what you'll be at 60. So you project, you anticipate, you have the foresight, and prepare for that scenario where you don't have to rely on the children. So that's why the obligation is not necessarily imposed on the child, because you have the ability to prepare for it and be independent of the child. Also, there are many people who do not have children. How do they survive old age? So this is where the rethinking can start. And now that we are old and perhaps have not thought about any alternative option, it is difficult. But that discomfort has to be there because of not preparing beforehand. I think the most tragic thing is to feel not cared for, neglected. But why set up that expectation in the first place? So we conclude there, everyone. And as you can see, it's a topic that affects all of us. From next week, we'll be moving on. We have a retreat next week, so we'll screen another lecture. But thereafter, our travel does not fall on any Sundays, so we'll be continuing about the vital role of thinking, the human intellect. So thank you, everybody. Have a good week. See you next week.